The sky above New Geneva was filled with light, not from the sun but from ships, sleek, silver vessels shaped like teardrops, floating silently over the city. They weren't human-made. For the first time in history, Earth had welcomed visitors from another world. The Senex had arrived. People lined the streets, eyes wide with wonder and nerves. Some waved flags, others held cameras high. Scientists, politicians, and reporters gathered at the landing zone, buzzing with excitement. The moment had been decades in the making. First contact, peaceful and official. Among them stood Cale Maris. He wasn't a soldier or a diplomat. He wasn't even famous. But he was important, chosen for a small but vital role. As one of Earth's top xenolinguists, his job was to help bridge the gap between two very different species. Cale was young, only 27, with soft brown eyes and a quiet voice. He wore a simple suit, neat but not flashy. His heart pounded as he waited behind the main delegation. This wasn't just a mission. It was a dream come true. Then the ramp lowered. A figure stepped forward. She was tall and graceful, her skin a shade of deep violet, almost glowing under the sunlight. Her hair flowed like liquid silver, and her eyes, large and luminous, studied the crowd with calm curiosity. She moved with quiet confidence, followed by others of her kind. This was Arila, lead diplomat of the Senex. Kyle couldn't look away. She was beautiful. Not in the way he'd seen in pictures or dreams, but in a way that made him forget how to breathe. There was something about her presence, calm, intelligent, otherworldly, that pulled him in completely. He didn't realize he was staring until someone nudged him gently. "Focus," whispered Dr. Lin, his supervisor. "You're here to work." Kyle blinked and tried to pull himself together. He adjusted his headset and stepped forward with the translation team. Arila looked directly at them now, her gaze sweeping across the group. Then it landed on Kyle and stayed there. His stomach flipped. She tilted her head slightly, as if trying to understand something. Then she spoke, not in English, but in the soft, musical tones of her people. Dr. Lin motioned for Kyle to translate. He swallowed hard and activated his device. With a slight delay, the words came through. "I greet you in peace. We come not as conquerors, but as seekers of knowledge and unity." Kyle responded carefully, choosing each word with precision. "We welcome you in peace as well. We are honored to meet you." Arila gave a slow nod. Then, after a pause, she asked, this time in perfect, though slightly accented, English, "Why do you keep staring at me?" There was a brief silence. Cale felt his face go red. Around him, a few members of the team tried to hide their smiles. Others exchanged glances. I'm sorry," Cale said quickly. "It won't happen again." Arila studied him for a moment longer. Then she smiled, a small knowing smile, before turning back to the rest of the delegation. The ceremony continued. Formal greetings were exchanged. Promises of cooperation were made. Cameras flashed. History was being written, but Kyle barely heard any of it. His mind kept replaying her question. Why do you keep staring at me? Because he didn't know how to explain that she was unlike anything he'd ever seen, that she was from another star, and yet somehow she felt familiar. Later that night, long after the event had ended, Cale sat alone in his room. Outside, the alien ships hovered like silent watchers in the dark sky. He opened his notebook and wrote, Day 1. First contact successful. Language barriers minimal. Cultural exchange promising. He paused, then added in smaller letters beneath. She noticed me staring. I hope she never finds out why. But what he didn't know was that Arila could sense more than just words. Sina X were empathic. They could feel strong emotions from nearby humans, especially ones as powerful as his. And when Kyle had stared at her earlier, she hadn't just seen him. She had felt him. The next morning, Kyle stood outside the translation chamber, hands trembling slightly as he adjusted his headset. The room was small but filled with high-tech equipment, holographic displays, voice modulators, and real-time translation software. It was where the first official human Scifi language exchanges would take place. He wasn't alone. Arila entered, quietly, dressed in flowing robes that shimmered like starlight. She carried herself with calm authority, yet her presence made Kyle's pulse race again. She noticed him right away. "Good morning," she said, her voice smooth and gentle. Kyle swallowed hard. "Good morning." She studied him for a moment, then tilted her head slightly, a gesture he was starting to recognize as curiosity. "You are different from the others," she said. Kale blinked. "Different how?" "You feel more intense," she replied, like a quiet storm beneath calm waters. Kyle wasn't sure how to respond. He opened his mouth, closed it, then managed a weak smile. "I'm just here to help translate," he said. Arila stepped closer, her eyes searching his face. Then, without warning, she asked, "Did you know I can sense emotions?" Kyle froze. "What do you mean?" he asked carefully. "In my people, we are empathic," Arila explained. "We feel strong emotions from those near us, especially when they are focused on us." Kale's heart dropped. "You mean, I felt yours yesterday," she said simply. "It was loud." Kale turned red. His mind raced through every second he'd stared at her, every thought he hadn't spoken but had surely felt. I didn't know," he stammered. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." Arila raised a hand, gently silencing him. "You don't have to apologize," she said. "On Scifi, emotions are not hidden. They are shared. If someone feels strongly about another, they speak it aloud or learn to suppress it." Kale looked down. "We don't always do either." Arila tilted her head again. "Why hide what is true?" Kale hesitated. That was a question he didn't have an easy answer for. Humans were complicated, afraid of rejection, afraid of being too much or not enough. "It's just how we are," he said softly. Arila watched him for a long moment. Then she smiled slightly. "Well," she said, stepping toward the table, "let's begin." And so they did. For hours they worked, together, translating phrases, comparing grammar structures, sharing cultural meanings behind words. Kale found himself fascinated by how deeply the Scifi language tied into emotion. Every sentence carried subtle layers of feeling. To say thank you was to express gratitude and warmth. To say hello was to acknowledge the other's presence and energy. It was beautiful. At one point, Arila paused mid-sentence and looked up. "You're thinking again," she said. Kale blinked. "What?" "You keep looking at me like you want to ask something," she said. "But you don't speak." Kyle cleared his throat. "I guess I'm just curious." "About what?" "About you," he admitted. Arila's lips curved into a soft smile. "Then ask," she said simply. Kale took a breath. "Why come all this way? Why Earth?" Arila leaned back slightly, thoughtful. "We seek understanding," she said. "To learn, to grow, to connect, but also to find new ways of being." She met his gaze directly. "And sometimes," she added, "to discover things we didn't know we were missing." Kale felt something stir inside him, something warm and hopeful. Before he could respond, the door chimed. Dr. Lin entered with a clipboard. "Time's up for today," she announced. Kyle and Arila both nodded. As Arila rose to leave, she paused beside Kale. "You hide your thoughts well," she said quietly, "but your heart speaks louder than words." Then she walked out, leaving Kyle sitting there, heart pounding. Because for the first time he wondered if maybe, just maybe, Arila felt something too. Kale and Arila met almost every morning in the translation chamber. At first it was all about language. Learning how Scifi's speech carried emotion like music, how their gestures meant more than just politeness, and how silence between them wasn't awkward, but meaningful. But slowly, something changed. It started with small things. A lingering glance, a shared smile that lasted a heartbeat too long, the way Arila would tilt her head when Kale spoke, as if she were listening not just to his words but to something deeper. And Kale? He couldn't stop thinking about her. He told himself it was just fascination. She was from another world after all. Her voice, her eyes, even the way she moved, it was all so different. So beautiful. But he knew it was more than that. One afternoon, they sat together outside the embassy garden. The sun hung low in the sky, casting golden light over the grass. Around them, birds chirped, and the air smelled faintly of flowers. Arila looked up at the sky. "Do you ever miss your home?" she asked. Kale shook his head. "Not really. I've always felt more at home in books than in places." Arila smiled slightly. "I understand," she said. "Sometimes I feel like I belong to no one place either." Kale looked at her surprised. "But you're a diplomat," he said. "You travel for peace. You must be respected everywhere." She gave a soft laugh. "Respected, yes," she said, "but not truly understood. My people value unity, but not individual choice. To feel deeply is seen as weakness. That's why we are careful who we let close." Kyle frowned. "So, you can't choose who you care about?" Arila turned to him, her silver eyes meeting his. "That's what makes this strange," she said softly. "I didn't expect to feel this way." Kyle's heart skipped. "What way?" he asked, barely above a whisper. Arila studied him, then reached out gently and placed her hand over his chest. "I feel something here," she said. "It's warm, it's strong, and it keeps calling to me." Kale didn't move, he could barely breathe. "I'm sorry," she said after a moment, pulling her hand back. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." "You didn't," Kyle said quickly. Then he hesitated. I don't know what this means." Arila tilted her head, again curious. "You humans hide your hearts behind words," she said. "Why?" Kale looked down. "Because we're afraid," he admitted. "Afraid of being hurt, of being too much, or not enough." Arila watched him quietly. Then she said, "Maybe we are not so different." That night, Kale sat alone in his room, staring out the window at the alien ships hovering in the distance. His thoughts were tangled. He had spent his life studying languages, cultures, and worlds beyond Earth. But nothing in his training had prepared him for this, for the quiet storm inside him whenever Arila walked into a room, for the way his heart beat faster when she looked at him. And yet, he knew the truth. This wasn't allowed. Their governments had rules, their people had fears. Humans and Cenax were still trying to understand each other as allies, not lovers. Still, Kale couldn't help the way he felt. And from the way Arila had touched his chest, looked into his eyes and spoken so honestly, he thought maybe she couldn't either. The next day, during their usual session, Dr. Lin entered with a serious look on her face. "We have a problem," she said. Kale and Arila both turned toward her. "The talks are getting tense," Dr. Lin continued. "There's been a disagreement over data sharing. Some people think the Cenax are hiding something." Arila stood up straight. "That's not true," she said firmly. Dr. Lin nodded. "I believe you. But the council wants someone neutral to review the translated communications, someone who knows both sides." She looked at Kale. "You'll be leading the new team." Kale blinked. "Me?" "Yes," Dr. Lin said. "You've built trust with Arila. We need that now." Kale glanced at Arila. She looked worried, but also hopeful. He took a deep breath. "I'll do it," he said. Arila stepped closer. "Then we will work together," she said, "to show them the truth." As they left the room, Kyle felt the weight of what was coming. More than diplomacy was at stake now. So was his heart. The tension in the air was thick. Kyle sat at the long table in the central conference room, surrounded by diplomats, scientists, and military advisors. Across from him, Arila stood tall beside her own delegation, her silver eyes calm but alert. The meeting had started like any other, formal, careful, diplomatic. But now it was turning into a storm. A human official slammed his hand on the table. "We warned you," he said, voice sharp. "We gave you access to our systems, and now we find out you've been holding back critical data." Arila's expression didn't change, but Kale could see the flicker of hurt behind her eyes. "That is not true," she said, her voice even. "We have shared all that we are permitted to share under our laws." "Then explain this," another official said, tapping a screen. A translated message appeared, lines of Sinex text converted into English. "Do not reveal the full nature of the core until trust is absolute." Silence filled the room. Kyle's stomach twisted. He looked at Arila, searching for an answer. She met his gaze, then turned to the group. "The core is not a weapon," she said. "It is knowledge, ancient knowledge passed down through generations. We do not give it freely because once given it cannot be taken back." "And who decides when humans are ready?" one of the soldiers snapped. "You?" "No," Arila replied. "Time does." Kale stood up slowly. "I think there's a misunderstanding," he said. "Let me translate directly from the original message." Everyone turned to him. He took a deep breath and read the Sinex text aloud, then translated carefully. "Do not rush understanding. Some truths must grow with trust, or they will break what little unity we have built." There was a pause. Then, Dr. Lin, Kale's supervisor, nodded slightly. "That's not as bad as it sounded before," she admitted. "But still," the soldier said, "they're hiding something." Kale turned to Arila. "You need to tell them everything," he said quietly. She shook her head. "If I do, I risk exile," she said. "Or worse." Kale swallowed hard. "This isn't just about politics anymore," he said. "It's about trust. You can't build peace if both sides are afraid of each other." Arila looked at him for a long moment. Then she stepped forward. "We'll speak," she said. And so she did. She explained that the core was not technology but memory, an archive of ancient civilizations lost to time. It contained warnings, histories, and lessons learned too late by species before them. "It is not forbidden to share," she said, "only dangerous. Knowledge without wisdom can destroy more than ignorance ever could." There was silence again. Then, slowly, some of the tension eased. Dr. Lin nodded. "I think we understand better now," she said. "But we also need transparency." Arila bowed her head slightly. "I will ask my council for permission to share more," she said. "But only if we can ensure it will be protected and respected." The officials exchanged glances, then the main diplomat spoke. "We'll consider your request," he said. "In the meantime, cooperation remains suspended." Arila stiffened. Kale stepped forward. "With respect," he said, "this mission was about building bridges, not walls." The diplomat looked at him. "You're not a negotiator, Maris." "No," Kale said, "but I'm someone who believes in truth, and I believe in her." The room went quiet. Arila looked at him, surprised. Kale turned to face her fully. "I know what I feel," he said softly, "and I know it's real." One of the officials cleared his throat. "That may be," he said, "but personal feelings have no place in diplomacy." Kyle clenched his jaw. "They do when those feelings are honest," he said, "and when they lead to understanding." Arila stepped closer. "Kyle," she whispered, "you don't have to do this." "Yes, I do," he said. The diplomat sighed. "Maris, effective immediately, you are removed from the translation team." Kyle didn't flinch. "I expected that," he said. Arila looked between them, her expression unreadable. Then she spoke. "If Kyle is dismissed," she said, "I will return to my world." Gasps filled the room. "You would abandon the mission over one man?" the diplomat asked. Arila lifted her chin. "He sees us," she said, "not as threats, not as tools, but as people. If you cannot accept that, then perhaps we were never meant to work together." Silence. Then slowly the diplomat nodded. We will reconsider his role, he said. For now. Kale exhaled. Arila turned to him. You risked everything, she said. Kale smiled faintly. Maybe, he said, but I'd do it again. Because for the first time, they weren't just two beings from different worlds. They were standing side by side. The silence between Kyle and Arila wasn't heavy. It was thoughtful, like the pause before a new chapter begins. They sat together on a quiet bench near the edge of the embassy garden. The sky above was dark now, filled with stars that looked just a little different from the ones Kale had grown up seeing. The scenic ships floated silently in the distance, glowing softly like lanterns in the night. Kale rubbed his hands together, trying to warm them against the cool air. I can't believe I'm still allowed to be here, he said quietly. Arila turned her head slightly, her silver eyes catching the starlight. You stood up for me, she said. For us. Kale looked at her. I didn't do it for politics, he said. I did it because I couldn't stay silent anymore. Arila studied him for a moment. And what are you saying now? She asked. Kale took a breath. That maybe. We need to stop pretending this is just about translation or diplomacy, he said. Because it's not. Arila tilted her head again, a gesture Kale had come to recognize as deep thought. You feel something, she said softly. Kale gave a small laugh. Yeah, he admitted. I do. He looked down at his hands. But I know how impossible this sounds. You're from another world. Your people have rules. My people have fears. And somewhere between all of that, there's us. Arila was quiet for a long time. Then she reached out and gently placed her hand over his. Kale didn't pull away. Instead, he felt something warm spread through his chest, something deeper than fear, stronger than doubt. I don't know the word for what I feel, Arila said finally. Not in my language, not exactly. Kyle looked at her. What does it feel like, he asked. Arila closed her eyes for a moment as if searching for the right way to explain. It feels like home, she said. Even though I've never been where you are before, it feels like peace, even when my heart races. And it feels like danger, but not the kind that hurts. Kyle smiled faintly. That sounds a lot like love, he said. Arila opened her eyes. Love, she repeated, tasting the word like something sweet. Is it always this hard? Kyle nodded. Sometimes, he said. But it's also worth it. Arila looked toward the sky. My people would not understand this, she said. To choose emotion over duty, to risk exile for something we cannot define. Kale swallowed hard. But what if we don't have to choose? He asked. What if we could find a place where none of that matters? Arila turned back to him. You mean leave? She asked. Kyle hesitated. I mean go somewhere else, he said. Someplace neutral, a place where we can just be. Arila didn't answer right away. She looked at him, really looked at him. Not as a diplomat, not as an alien, but as someone who had found something rare and unexpected. And maybe, just maybe, she didn't want to let it go. I would have to leave everything behind, she said softly. Kyle nodded. So would I, he said. But I think I already did. Arila looked into his eyes, and for the first time, Kyle saw something shift inside her. Hope. She squeezed his hand lightly. Then let's see where this path leads, she said. Just then a soft chime came from Arila's wristband. A message. Her expression changed. Kale frowned. What is it? Arila read the message quickly, then looked up at him. My council has responded, she said. They are not happy with what happened today. They say I must return home immediately. Kale's heart sank. They're pulling you out? Arila nodded slowly. For now, she said. But I will not go quietly. Kale's throat tightened. What does that mean? Arila stood, her posture strong. It means I will ask for permission to stay, she said. If they refuse, I will ask for asylum. Kyle stared at her. You'd give up your home? For this? Arila stepped closer. I would give up 1,000 stars, she said, to keep this feeling. Kale felt his eyes sting. He didn't know what would happen next. He didn't know if their governments would accept this, if the world would understand. But he knew one thing. Wherever Arila went, he would follow. Because this wasn't just about first contact anymore. It was about finding something real. Something worth risking everything for. Kyle and Arila wouldn't wait for permission. They wouldn't risk being torn apart by politics or fear. If neither world would accept them together, they would find a place where no one could tell them who to love. So they left Earth. They boarded a small Cenax vessel under the cover of night, slipping past security with quiet precision. The ship was sleek and silent, its walls glowing softly with bioluminescent light. It felt like stepping into another dream. As the ship lifted off, Kale looked out the window and watched Earth shrink behind them, blue and bright against the darkness of space, his home. Gone, Arila sat beside him, her violet skin catching the soft glow of the cabin lights. You're really doing this, she said quietly. Kyle smiled, though his heart was heavy. I told you I would, he said. Wherever you go, I'm coming too. Arila looked at him for a long moment. Then she reached out and gently took his hand. Thank you, she said. The journey began with silence. Not awkward silence, but the kind that comes when two people are still learning how to exist together outside of everything they've ever known. At first they didn't talk much. They explored the ship, shared quiet meals, and stared out at the stars. But slowly, as the days passed, the silence filled with stories. Kyle told Arila about growing up on Earth, about his parents, his books, the way he used to imagine alien worlds long before he ever met one. Arila told him about her planet, the silver oceans, the sky that turned gold at sunset, the way her people communicated not just with words, but with emotion. And slowly, something beautiful grew between them. Understanding. One evening, as the ship drifted near a strange, glowing nebula, Kale sat cross-legged on the floor, sketching constellations in a small notebook. Arila walked over and crouched beside him. What are you drawing? She asked. Stars, Kyle said. But not the ones we know. These are new ones. I want to give them names. Arila tilted her head. Why? Because every place has stories, Kale said. Even empty space. Arila sat down beside him. Then let's make our own, she said. Together they named the stars. They called one Hope, because it shone through the dark. Another they called Silence, because it burned quietly but never faded. And one star brighter than the rest, they named Together. That night, for the first time, they slept side by side, not as diplomats, not as strangers from different worlds, but as two people who had chosen each other. Their journey wasn't easy. They visited planets unlike anything Kale had imagined, some covered in crystal forests, others floating in endless oceans. They met alien traders, ancient beings who spoke in riddles, and creatures that sang instead of spoke. Everywhere they went they were different, human and Cenax, Earth and star. But they were never alone. In one city built inside a giant tree, Kale learned to paint with light, creating images that danced in the air. In another world where sound shaped reality, Arila taught him how to sing emotions into music. They laughed, they argued, they made mistakes, but they kept going, and with every step, they built something real. A life beyond borders, beyond rules. One day while walking across a desert of red sand, Arila stopped suddenly. She looked at Kale, her eyes full of something deep. I don't regret this, she said. But sometimes I wonder, what if we never find a place that truly accepts us? Kale looked at her, then took her hand. We already found it, he said. Right here, with each other. Arila smiled, and for the first time she believed. Then came the message. It arrived late one night, blinking softly on the ship's console. Arila read it silently, her face unreadable. Kyle stood behind her. "What is it?" he asked. Arila turned to him slowly. "My homeworld," she said. "They need me." Kale's heart sank. "They're asking me to come back," Arila continued. "There's something wrong. Something serious." Kyle swallowed hard. "Do you think it's safe?" Arila shook her head. "I don't know," she said. "But I have to go." Kyle nodded slowly. "Then I'm coming with you." Arila looked at him surprised. "You don't have to," she said. "Yes," Kyle said firmly. "I do." Because this wasn't just about love anymore. It was about standing together. No matter what came next. It was a planet of glowing oceans and silver skies. Towering trees stretched toward the clouds like hands reaching for the stars. The air shimmered with soft light, as if the planet itself pulsed with life. But beneath its beauty, something was wrong. As their ship landed, Arila stepped out first, her posture tense. Kyle followed close behind, his heart pounding. They were not returning as diplomats or honored guests. They were returners, strangers, outcasts. A group of Cenax officials awaited them at the landing zone. Their robes were dark, their expressions colder than space. Arila stepped forward. "I have returned," she said, "because my people need me." One of the elders stepped forward, tall, with deep violet skin and eyes that burned with authority. "You left without permission," he said coldly. "You abandoned your duties for this?" He looked at Kyle. Arila didn't flinch. "I did not abandon duty," she said. "I found it in something greater." The elder narrowed his eyes. "And what do you believe you bring back with you?" he asked. "A human? A symbol of weakness?" Kale stepped forward then, standing beside Arila. "I bring understanding," he said simply. There was silence. Then, from the crowd, a young Cenax woman stepped forward. "She is right," she said. "We are dying." A murmur spread through the crowd. Kyle and Arila exchanged glances. "What do you mean?" Arila asked. The young woman lowered her head. "Our world is fading," she said. "Our connection to each other has grown weak. We feel less, we share less, and now our core is failing." Kyle frowned. "The core?" he asked. Arila turned to him. "It's the heart of our history," she said. "If it fails, we lose who we are." Kyle took a breath. "Then let us help," he said. The elder shook his head. "A human cannot save us," he said. Kyle stepped forward again. "No," he agreed. "But we can." He looked at Arila. "We've traveled across the stars together," he said. "We've learned from other worlds, from other hearts. Maybe there's something we can teach you too." The crowd grew quiet. Arila looked at her people, at the fear in their eyes, the pain in their silence. She stepped forward. "For years we believed emotion made us weak," she said. "That control was strength. But I have seen something different. I have felt something real, not just in Kale but in the way we used to be." She looked at the elder. "If we forget how to feel," she said, "then we are already lost." For a long moment no one spoke. Then, slowly, the young Cenax woman reached out and touched Arila's hand. "I remember," she whispered. "Before the silence, we used to sing." Another stepped forward. "I remember laughter." And another. "I remember love." Tears filled Arila's eyes. Kyle stood beside her, silent but proud. They had come home not to be judged, but to remind a people of who they once were. Days passed. Kyle and Arila worked with the Cenax scholars, sharing what they had learned on their journey. They showed how emotions could be strength, not weakness, how love could build bridges, not walls. Slowly, things began to change. The core stabilized. Not because of technology, right, but because of feeling. And when the time came for the final ceremony, Kale stood beside Arila once more, this time not as an outsider, but as part of something new. A voice rang out. Let it be known that peace was not brought by power nor by politics, but by two hearts that crossed the stars to find each other. Arila turned to Kale. You stayed, she said softly. Kale smiled. I promised I would. They walked together toward the horizon, where the sky turned gold and the ocean sang with light. And as they watched the twin suns set behind the silver trees, Kyle whispered, We came from different stars, but found our light in each other.